2024 has been the slowest housing market that we've seen at least in the past 30 years, according to Redfin. People aren't selling their homes. There haven't been many transactions, but that's all starting to change with the Federal Reserve cutting their Fed funds rate. We're seeing an increase in home touring activity, meaning more people are seeing properties, and an increase in mortgage demand, meaning more people are applying for loans and applying for mortgages out there. All of that will result in more sales across the country, as well as more buyers, more competition in the housing market. So things are changing and they could start to change quickly here. Now, how do you prepare as a home buyer or a home seller for this changing market? And what can you expect? I think we will see, yes, more competition in the market, but we will also see more sellers. Listings haven't been this low since 2012. And so as mortgage rates drop, many of the buyers who have locked into that low mortgage rate will look at what their monthly payment would be at their next property, and they might consider selling. I think many of them will consider selling. They've built up a lot of equity over the past few years as prices have increased, which will encourage more of them to put their home on the market, roll that equity into a new property, and unlock inventory that's been gridlocked for the past few years. Now, what should you do in the housing market today? Well, we're going to talk about that in this video, but I'll give you a quick tip to start things off. And my tip for both home buyers and sellers is to stay patient out there, right? If you're a home buyer, look, if you're in a multiple offer situation, you have to act quickly. And there's really not much you can do about that if it's a property that you want. However, what I'm doing for properties that don't have multiple offers or that don't have any offers, I'm staying patient. I am in the market looking to purchase a property right now myself. And coincidentally, I'm also about to get married in the next 10 days here. So I'm going to be taking about 3 weeks off and not submit an offer on any of the listings that I like. Although there's a handful of multifamily properties that I do like on the market, I'm hoping that 3 weeks from now, those properties will still be on the market and I will have more leverage to potentially get myself a better deal. Now, if you're a seller right now, it's important to stay patient as well. Even if your property is priced attractively, even if it's priced appropriately, there's a good chance that it won't sell within the first weekend, maybe not even the first month. So be patient. It only takes one buyer. And we are still seeing homes go under contract. So just know that it's normal. This is not the market that we had in 2021 or 2022 when everything was flying off the shelves. Yes, of course, some homes are getting multiple offers, but there are more and more properties that are sitting on the market for longer. So be patient. All right, we're going to get right into the articles and the stats behind what I just claimed at the beginning of this video. Before we do, my name is Liam O'Reilly. I'm a realtor with Jerry Riley Real Estate here in Vermont. If you have any real estate needs, whether it's in Vermont or anywhere else, all of my contact information is in the description. Reach out to me directly. I would be happy to help you. So let's get into these articles here. So out of Redfin, just 2.5% of homes, I know my head kind of cuts off this title, just 2.5% of U.S. homes change hands this year, lowest rate in decades. So we take a look here. This chart only goes back to 2012, but they say here in this article that this is the lowest rate that we've seen. 2.5% of homes changing hands. 2.5% of existing property sales is the lowest rate that we've seen at least in the last 30 years. It says here, our analysis used data from between 2012 and 2024, but zooming out further, this year's turnover rate is the lowest in at least the past 30 years. Existing home sales were similar in the early to mid 1990s. Now, if you remember this mortgage applications chart that we're going to talk about deeper later in this video, but we take a look at what was going on in the mid 1990s, we see that mortgage applications were around the same levels that they are today. Now, they're a little bit higher today in the 190s, or at least that's what it was at in March. And we have this big bump now that we're going to talk about later in this video. But the mid 90s, there weren't many people searching for properties. This is the last time we've seen mortgage applications this low. And that's what's contributing to the shortage in home sales that we're experiencing across the country, the slow housing market. There aren't many transactions. Now, what's also contributing to that is low listings. Like I mentioned at this video, listings are the lowest since 2012. This is what the chart shows, goes all the way back to 2012. So fewer sellers are listing their homes for the first 8 months of this year. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about year to date, the housing market year to date. Listings haven't declined this much since coming out of the great financial crisis and the housing bust that occurred before then. So we are in a extremely slow housing market, primarily because of the lock-in rate, right? Elevated mortgage rates. Mortgage rates are higher than they have been over the past few years. And more than three quarters of mortgaged U.S. homeowners have secured a rate well at under 5%, well below the rates on offer this year. So under 5% means a rate in the fours, at least, 4.75, 4.85 or lower. Some people have rates in the 3%, the 2%. So as mortgage rates drop, we will see sellers start to jump back into the housing market. Now, when we take a look at this other article out of Redfin, we see here that home buyer demand is already taking up. We see their Redfin home buyer demand index is at its highest level since May. Now, Redfin, of course, they're just one real estate company. It doesn't account for the entire housing market, but they do have a lot of people who use their website, who use their agents. And so their data, the data that they use, is a good example of what's going on in the overall housing market. Now, it's up 1% year over year, first increase since the 4 weeks ending of October 22nd, 2023, which is pretty crazy. So homebuyer demand is slowly starting to tick up, highest level since May. And if you guys know anything about the housing market, you know that the spring is typically the busy time for the housing market. That's when most home buyers are out. That's when most home sellers are out. And so the fact that we are now at spring levels or at the same levels of home buyer activity since the spring is pretty significant. It shows that people are waiting on the sidelines and they're ready to buy. They just need mortgage rates to come down. Now, touring activity as well. This is separate from Redfin. This is through Showing Time, which is a scheduling company that realtors use to schedule showings. It's something that I use almost daily as a realtor. We see that they're up 8% from the start of the year. This time last year, it was down 4% from the start of 2023. So more people, not only in Redfin's data, but across the entire market, more people are setting up showings and seeing properties. Now, when we take a look a little bit further down, we see that median sales price, they say it's the biggest increase in 2 months. But when we scroll down to their chart here, we see that the median sales price is not actually rising year over year. It's staying flat. And the median sales price this time last year was on a slow decline. And we're probably going to see a similar decline in median sales price like we saw over the past 2 years. It's not going to drop off a cliff, at least not across the country. Of course, I've talked many times in other videos that certain markets have a higher risk than others, but overall, the median sales price is not falling across the country. Now, it's not increasing much either. The biggest increase in the past 2 months is not anything to write home about. It's really just staying stable. And last year, it trended off faster than it is this year. Now, median asking price, biggest increase since January. Now, this is something I have noticed throughout the housing market here in Vermont. A lot of sellers are asking top dollar for their home, sometimes even more than what their home is actually worth. And so that can make things tricky for you as a home buyer out there. That's why staying patient is not necessarily a bad decision, because the longer that home sits on the market, especially if it is overpriced, the more leverage you will have as a home buyer. I've looked at some recent closings around Vermont, and some homes are going under contract even within the first week that end up closing for a reasonable amount under list price. So if a seller isn't getting the activity that they thought and they don't get the offers that they thought, even if it's the first few days on the market, it might be worth submitting a lower offer just to see how they respond. Your chances are much higher at having that lower offer accepted once the home sat on the market for a little while. But even if it just hit the market, I don't think it hurts to submit an offer under list price and see what happens. Now, going back to mortgage data, what I really wanted to highlight, of course, we talked about the difference between 2019 or 1995 and today. Of course, this is a good gauge of how many buyers there are in the market, right? A lot of buyers use mortgages when purchasing their properties. And so the fact that we were the lowest that we've seen in the past 30 years, this past year in 2024, just shows how slow home buyer activity is. But when we zoom in, when we take a look at the 1-year chart, we'll look at this spike as the Federal Reserve first geared up to cut their rates and then actually cut their rates. We see a huge spike in mortgage demand across the country, right? This is what I was talking about in my last video, where it's important for you as a home buyer, or the biggest advantage you can have as a home buyer, is to track mortgage rates before the Federal Reserve cuts their rates, right? When the Federal Reserve does that rate cut, it makes national news. People all across the industry talk about it, but mortgage rates were actually lower before the Federal Reserve cut that Fed funds rate. And they have risen slightly since the Fed rate cut, because of all this mortgage demand. So I think staying on top of it, watching mortgage rates ahead of what the Fed's decision will be, watching the incoming data that, of course, we cover on this channel, the CPI numbers, stuff that the Fed watches and uses to decide on how far to cut their rates or what to do with the Fed funds rate, which, of course, spills down into mortgage rates. Being on top of that data is important for you as a home buyer in order to give you an advantage over what will be more competition heading into 2025. So let me know what you think of everything. Are you seeing more activity? Do you think there are more home buyers now? Of course, the market is much slower than it has been, which is why I think right now is a great buying opportunity, especially homes that have sat on the market for a little while. There's a great opportunity for you as a home buyer out there to get a good deal in the housing market. We don't know how long this is going to last. Again, with increased demand, we will likely see more inventory come to the market as more sellers decide now is the right time to sell, but there will be more buyers. And so you might be trading one hardship of a higher mortgage rate for another hardship of more competition and multiple offers. So you have to weigh that in when thinking about your home buying and home selling decision, which is why I'm actively looking for a home now. I think it's a great time to buy. I will keep you posted as my home buying journey continues. This will be my second property, my second multifamily property, and I'll keep you guys posted as things progress on that end. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.